live now, and the session will also be recorded if anyone needs to jump off or wants to catch up later. Check it's all going as it should. Welcome as you are all joining. Thank you for being here. All looks to be working as it should. Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. Check it's live as it should be. Yes. Okay, great. All right, just give it one more moment as people start to join. Actually, I had loads of people join up for today's session, which is great. Okay, all right, we'll get started and then people can catch up as they come in. Thank you, everyone. Welcome. Great to have you all here, and thank you for joining over your lunch break. If you're here, the chances are you may be feeling that something needs to change for you, whether you're feeling unfulfilled in your current role or just restless, or maybe you've got that horrible sinking feeling that, you know, is this all there is? Or maybe you're just interested about what else might be possible for you. So whatever's brought you here today, thank you. Welcome. And today is all about hearing what career change actually looks like in real life, not just what you see in LinkedIn, on LinkedIn, sorry, or, you know, how it can really be. So for anyone I haven't met, I'm Hilary and I lead the Escape School at Escape City. We've supported mid-career professionals to make meaningful changes for over 16 years. Actually, interesting fact, is actually our Escape's 16th anniversary today. Yeah, what a day. And we've supported more than 2,500 people through our Career Change Accelerator. So today we're not going to be hearing directly from someone who's lived with the impact of the programme over time, not just during the kind of 2 or 3 months of the accelerator, but in the years afterwards as well. So I'm joined by Claudia. Welcome, Claudia. She spent 8 years in banking, but then ran a series of experiments during the Career Change Accelerator, wedding planning, floristry. I'll leave you to give all the details. Then going on to launch a sustainable beauty business and is now Chief Marketing Officer at Ruby. Claudia joined the accelerator in 2018, which gave her that kind of long view perspective on how you know, the programme has shaped the years afterwards and how change can unfold. So Claudia, welcome.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks for being here.
Hi, everyone. No, so happy to be here.
And just before we kind of go back to rewind into your story, do you want to just introduce yourself briefly, just who you are and what you're doing now, and then we'll go back to where things started for you?
Yeah, sure. So as Hilary said, my name is Claudia. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer, Marketing Director for a company called Ruby. We are an on-demand at-home beauty and wellness platform. So basically enables you to book anything from a massage to a manicure to Botox and kind of everything in between, kind of directly to your house. I've been there for just over a year now, and I lead all of their marketing across the UK and internationally.
Great. Thank you. So let's rewind before Escape, before you join the accelerator. Can you just paint a picture of what life and work looked like for you before that, and how it felt day to day?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it most probably goes to start with saying that, like, I, you know, did maybe like the classic route that a lot of people did. You know, I went to university. I wasn't ever someone who was like, I know I'm going to be a doctor or a lawyer. Like I grew up being interested in lots of different things. And I don't necessarily think like our educational system or the career advice you get when you're younger, definitely when I was at school, which is like, God, a long time ago now, didn't feel like it was set up to provide advice in that way. So I kind of got to uni, you know, I got the classic advice of like, just go study the subject you're interested in the most. And then, you know, whilst at uni, none of that really became a lot clearer to me around what I should be doing. And I actually just ended up following pretty much what everyone else did, or was kind of driven by like, I wanted to move to London. I needed to earn money. My parents weren't going to be giving me anything. And what was everyone else doing was like kind of joining a graduate scheme. So, you know, I don't know what those programs are like to apply to now, but back then you just got on this kind of merry-go-round and applied. And I ended up joining Barclays on their graduate program. And somehow 8 years later, I was still working there. And by all intents and purposes, it wasn't horrendous. You know, like I had great career progression. I think from the outside, everything actually looked really, really good. But internally, I guess I faced this kind of inner turmoil of like, is this what I want to do? And like, how have I kind of ended up here? I was sort of a bit embarrassed by telling people what I did because it felt so at odds with like who I was. I guess this was also at the time where like maybe there's a lot of like bashing of like people who worked in finance. And I just remember being so uninterested in what I was doing, but wasn't to say that I wasn't necessarily good at it. So that's what made it quite challenging. And I think that's when we talk about that feeling of being stuck. There's two big pulls from that, which is what happened to me, which was like financially, this was actually providing for me and it was doing well and like I was good at it. But then the other pull was just like, I just could not answer the question on what else I should be doing. And I think those two things combined is like the perfect catalyst to just be sat there, like procrastinating and going around in circles. So yeah, thank God for escape.
Yeah, and I can imagine that a lot of people listening will recognize kind of parts of that, but also certainly that like push and pull and between those kind of two conflicts. Was there, I suppose, was there a moment when you realized, you know, this might not be just a bad patch, but actually, you know, something really needs to change? Or was it more of a kind of overarching feeling?
Yeah, I mean, so what I will admit, and I hope this maybe gives comfort to people, is that I felt like this for a really long time and didn't do anything about it. Or kind of would do the thing of like apply for a few different jobs and they wouldn't really go anywhere or anything like that, but not really take it that seriously. I think it came to a real head. I got a promotion that I thought I'd really, really wanted. And I remember this memory very clearly. I remember being sat in a meeting room talking about really important stuff. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, God, I just don't care about any of this. And I think that was a bit of an inflection point. It didn't like make the change happen, but I remember being like, okay, this is getting to a point where like I really need to kind of go and do something about it. And I was just kind of I started getting all consumed by it in terms of just feeling quite miserable, I would say, and not being able to make the change. So yeah.
Yeah, and again, I think a lot of people would be able to resonate with the fact that it can go on for a long time before you actually do something, because it, you know, it's not easy. It's not something to be kind of taken lightly. So I guess just finally on that, actually, just thinking, was there anything that kind of was like trying to make you like justify staying, like telling yourself like, oh no, I should just stay because of this, or you know,
Yeah,
or
I mean,
not make the change?
I still think if I spoke to my parents now, they would probably say that like the proudest thing that I've ever done was get a job at Barclays. Maybe not, and maybe that's in my head. But yeah, I mean, at the time, you know, my parents, I had a mortgage,
Mm.
and you know, I think friends were like quite supportive, but I wasn't in a, now a lot of people have bizarrely gone on to like make changes or career changes, but at the time, definitely no one was. So everyone just felt it was like, oh yeah, that, you know, what are you going to do? And it was quite daunting. So there wasn't, yeah, I would say I wasn't like surrounded by like huge amounts of support to go and change. I think everyone was just like, what are you complaining about? You've got a great job. You know, you've just got promoted. You know, and I think it would have been easier if I could say, oh, and I just want to go and do this. Then I think that would have been an easier conversation. But when you speak to people and be like, oh, I'm really unhappy. Well, this is what I felt. I'm really unhappy. I don't like what I'm doing. And they'd be like, oh, so what do you want to do? And you'd be like, I don't know. It felt like you were quite silly and taking quite a lot of risk, or that you should work that, you should have that kind of figured or know that. So that, and I think that's what, you know, I mean, I think that's what's amazing about the escape course, but that's definitely what kind of kept me kind of stuck.
Yeah, yeah. And I think actually you touched on an important point there, that actually any kind of change, it doesn't start with like being certain about what's next. It actually starts with just like noticing something that's slightly off or wrong, and yeah. So moving on to how you came to escape, how did it land on your radar, and what made you like feel, yeah, this is what I need right now?
Yeah, so for me, it like I actually found the escape job board first, and I remember like scrolling through it and being like, oh, all these jobs sound, you know, like great, or how would I apply? And never really doing anything of it. And then I got a notification, which I'm assuming some of you guys have been to kind of like, you know, like a session like this, where you could kind of find out a bit more. And I went along, and then that's when I kind of first came across the idea of like going like kind of to an accelerator, like that the accelerator existed and that there was this kind of support. But I think more importantly, what it opened up to for me was like, oh, wow, there's loads of people who feel like this. And that, I think, started to create some kind of comfort blanket that it wasn't just me. Because I think when you're having those conversations, maybe with friends and family, and you're not getting like the same response back, or people in your circle who are feeling the same, and then you kind of meet, you know, another community of people who are, you're like, okay, this isn't just me, like, there's not a problem with me, like, and I found that kind of really, really comforting. And then from there it moved really quickly. I think I went to that evening, and then I think I started like a month later, or I can't remember the exact timelines. We were talking like nearly 8 years ago, but like it was pretty soon after. Like I made the decision, and then like I went, and then I was like, this is kind of what I need to do, and signed up. I didn't actually even tell anyone.
And did you have any doubts at that point? Or were you just like, no, I'm doing it? Decided.
I mean, I did have doubts because obviously, like, there's a, you know, a huge financial cost involved, and I think my biggest concern was like, is this going to be something that I do and then I don't go through with? I had concerns about like, would it actually lead to the answer? And I think the best thing that happened once I started the course was like managing that set of expectations, and knowing that like you're not going to do a 6-10 week course and your life is going to like be perfectly formed at the end of it. This is like a big pillar to help you get there. Like it's a big, you know, it's a big part of the process. You know, and there will definitely be people who figure it all out on that time, but there's also lots of people who, you know, there's more work to be done after. But yeah, I mean, for me, sorry, what was I saying about the
Just
kind of
yeah, if you
start?
had any,
Yeah, knowing to start.
yeah.
Yeah, like, and concerns. I mean, it was probably a bit around financially, but I think it had also got to a point where I was like, I just know I needed help to answer the question. Like I had I'd felt like I'd tried to do a lot of the thinking myself, and it was to a point where I was like, I actually couldn't even answer the question of what I wanted to do, and I didn't have the skills to figure that out. So I was like, this course was completely speaking to that problem, which was like, you know, this is about you feeling like this, and we're going to figure this out together. And that's what made it feel like, to me, it was the right kind of program for me. But I do remember having a kind of honest conversation with myself, where my job was, at the time, like, everyone's work was really, really busy. The only commitment I made to myself was like, if I'm doing this and spending this money, I have to commit to it. And I think that is really, really key, because I think that's when you get the most out of it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And actually, you touch on a valid point there around kind of the money side of things, and actually having why, in my experience of leading it, why people have been able to, it's giving something that you aren't actually able to create on your own always. It's the structure, it's the momentum, it's like doing it alongside other people, and actually getting out of your head and into the real world with something that can be quite tough.
Yeah.
So I suppose now, kind of moving on to your time like in the accelerator itself. So it covers a lot from mindset shift to mapping possibility to small experiments. And once you're in it, I know that people have said it feels like it's moving quite quickly. Looking back, what part of the program made the biggest difference for you? Yeah, what kind of stuck with you?
I think there's two bits, which is one, like, getting rid of this mindset of like, why can't I figure this out myself? And like that quite negative spiral you could get into, which is like, oh, well, if I was a smart enough person, I'd be able to answer these questions. So there was like a bit of it, like the therapy of just being like, and also the kind of support of like, I am a smart, capable human, and how have I got stuck in a job for 8, 9 years that I don't like? And there is a bit of like, you've just got to kind of forgive yourself, unpack the reasons why that is, know what those reasons are, and then like move on. But like, I thought the course tackled that quite well. Like, I had a really clear understanding of like why I'd made those decisions and why I might not want to keep doing that. So that really, really stayed with me. I think the next bit for me is, having been someone who just had so many interests, but had always sort of seen that as a bit of a weakness. And I still now sometimes think like, oh God, it would just be so delicious if I was just really good at one thing, or like I just one clear skill that let itself be an obvious job. And I think the course for me really taught me like how that is a skill set in itself, and like how you can use that to your benefit, and the tools to be able to then showcase that to jobs and employers. Is just like, yeah, I just found that like so incredible. And if anything, it was actually kind of like encouraged to have more interest, because you could kind of go and explore different things that could take you down different routes. And I think it sets you up for like a really interesting life, whereby you can like kind of keep changing and keep trying new things, and changing that kind of perspective on it. So I absolutely kind of love that, like the whole bit around chasing your curiosity, like that to me was just so life-changing, just having that kind of reframed over like chasing your passions and like, what are you passionate about? And I used to remember people asking that and being like, oh, I'm not passionate about anything.
Yeah, and I think actually you touched on that there, but one of the things that people find really hard is letting go, that like you say, it's great to have loads of ideas and loads of curiosities, and actually, but letting go of the idea that everything has to work, and actually just by trying something, you're learning something.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think also just, you can be interested in lots of things, but not all of them need to become your job. And then I think you get this, I found this quite good way of being able to separate things out of like, I'm interested in this, but if I ever made this my job, I would very quickly lose interest, because the course teaches you this concept around no job. We're all trained. There's a quote that's like, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And like, that is complete nonsense, right? Like, all parts of jobs have horrible bits to them, or bits that aren't that fun. And therefore, if you really are interested in something, but the negative parts of that and whatever it was to do that successfully, or what, you didn't enjoy, then that might be something you should just keep as a hobby, or whatever. And I think that was a really helpful framework, and just like a bit of a reality check, because I think, especially nowadays with the world of LinkedIn, God, I mean, thank God that didn't fully exist back when I was doing this, and probably would have spiraled for another 5 years. But there's just so much of that chatter, podcast chat, and that I just think is so unuseful to most people. And that having that realism in the course, I thought was amazing.
Yeah, and obviously, so a big part of something that we do is experimentation. And just for anyone listening, when we say experiments, we're talking about basically small, low risk tests that are deliberately small and contained, not committing long term, just trying something out in the real world in order to learn faster. That could be conversation, a side project, course, a few hours a week, enough to learn without kind of having to quit your job and pack it all in. Claudia, for you, was there an experiment that you tried that stuck with you or didn't work, something that maybe changed how you thought?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say that I carried on doing experiments kind of after, and I did do quite a few. So I'll tell you one that like I really realized that this would not be the right kind of role for me. So I love planning things, and like all my friends, I've literally just organized a weekend away last weekend with my friendship group, and I'd always be like the chief organizer of anything. Loved at the time organizing my wedding, etc., etc. And I thought, right, this has got to be the thing that I'm going to do. Like, I'm going to be a wedding planner. And this is a little bit of luck, because I appreciate it. There was a girl on the escape group, I think she'd been on the cohort before us, who was getting married. She's having quite like a small wedding in London. And I was like, I'll plan your wedding for you. And I did, which somehow I ended up on like a Saturday afternoon in Battersea Park planning, like running this girl's wedding, and like running around with like a clipboard and all the stuff. And I cannot tell you how I never wanted to do that thing ever again. Like, I love organizing things for myself and people I love, but for strangers who like can't make a decision, I couldn't, nothing infuriated me more. And I'm so glad I did it that way. And I'm sure there's other ways you could experiment that. Like, you could reach out to like small wedding planners, being like, could I come and help with you on the day? Can I do a bit of work experience for free? And I'm sure someone who runs there's lots of other ways that I think you could really get that experience. But if I compared that to like what I most probably would have done, and I used to fantasize about being a wedding planner, I used to follow all these people on Instagram. What I most probably would have done before is like quit my job, like gone and done like maybe another an expensive course on it, set up a website, gone down this whole track path before I'd actually even done an event in the smallest possible scale, and then would have been like stuck again. So in that way it was just amazing around figuring that out. But yeah, and that I did quite a few of them and followed things that I was interested in, looking at it both not just from an interest, but also like, do I have any particular skills that could really lean into something? What was missing from my previous job, like that I could kind of want to go into? What was I jealous of people who did? I think that's a good question to ask you. Like who do you admire? And mapped out this whole map of possibilities. I mean, I think I did like 5 or 6 experiments. I also went to a flower worked at a flower shop because I thought I wanted to be a florist, and that was interesting because that was something where I was like, this is something I so love, but I think I want to park this for now, and it might be something I do a lot later. So not everything was just no. I think you then need to apply another lens of like, would I, what's the feasibility of this, and does it meet lots of other criteria in my life? Like, would it financially, would I be able to support myself? And there's another lens of just, oh, this is fun, and I enjoy the work. And for me at the time, that wasn't the right thing, but it's definitely always stayed in the back of my mind that would be like something I'd love to do.
Yeah, Yeah, that's great. I love that story about the wedding planning.
They sometimes come up on my iPhone and I'm just like, what was he doing?
Never again.
Yeah, never again.
Was there anything, like, I guess during the program, or shortly after, were there any wobbles for you? When it might have been easier to think, no, I'm not going to continue in this direction. I'm going to just stick with what I'm doing, or were there any wobbles in particular?
I mean, for me, and I'd say this would have been a mega wobble if it hadn't have been for the support of Escape, where there were obviously some people who had come maybe with a bit more intent into the program of like, I'm a banker and I want to become, I want to go into marketing. I'm just going to use my career. And therefore, I want to learn, like, how can I, and the course also does this brilliantly. How do I position myself for that and give me the tools and everything like that to go up to position myself and to get a role like that, and all this, all the more soft skills that you might need, or technical skills or whatever. But for me, I finished the course and I had a few like experiments and things set up, but I definitely wasn't like, okay, I have the answer. And that, I think, over until I then ended up only quitting my job most probably nearly a year later. So there were loads of moments in that where I just felt like, oh God, like, what is the answer to this? And obviously the other bit of it is that you finish the course and then everyone's like, so what are you going to do? And I'd be like, not sure yet. So like, that obviously leads you to kind of feeling a bit, anxious, or kind of sending a downward spiral. But I think because for me, the course had set me up to be like, I'm not listening to those thoughts. Like, I know the journey I need to go on. Yes, it might be taking a little bit more time, but I'm going to get there. I think I was able to kind of manage that. But yeah, it wasn't as linear as me. I think going into it with the expectation that this is just a part of the journey, and that everyone's journeys are going to look slightly different, is really, really important. But yeah, there were loads of like, what am I doing?
Yeah. Great, thank you. So just, I suppose, now thinking more around like practicalities, because I know that a lot of people listening will be, wondering how realistic all of this is. Like, so I suppose, how do you actually fit the accelerator and the kind of experiments around work and life at the same time? How did you find that?
I mean, definitely challenging. And look, I think with anything that you do in life, when you make a commitment, that normally means there's sacrifices elsewhere, and that's just the reality. I was at a point in, like, my job was really, really busy. So like, it's not that I could, like, I think I couldn't do loads of the experiments and things like that just during the daytime, but I could attend all the courses. And as I said at the beginning, I just made my commitment to myself that I would never miss a session unless I was ill. Like, I would never get work as an excuse. Like, I would deprioritize everything else, whether that was seeing friends and family, going to the gym, like, knew that there'd be loads of other bits in my life which would fall maybe a bit down, because my focus for the next 10 weeks was doing this course, and like maintaining my job. And therefore I always have, like, in the Escape, one of the things that I came out with, it was like, you create bars of your life, and you know that not all of them can be on at 10 of what's important to you at all times. So at that time, if I just look at the bars of my life, which is like work, staying healthy, seeing friends, being a good daughter, whatever they are, all, like, I was like, I could keep doing work and the Escape at 10, and everything else is going to fall to a 2, and I've just got to accept that. And that's how I managed to kind of kind of fit it in. But I imagine for other people it might be, if it does impact what you actually do and like the timings, I probably couldn't speak to that, because for me, all the courses were in the evening, and my job, like, I could get out of working to kind of attend and then set up time at the weekend. I couldn't, I don't have the advice of like, you have children or something like that, I think that's a conversation you're probably going to have with your partner or your family around managing it. But I think you will only get out of it if you commit fully.
Yeah, it's great advice. And I think it is something that people worry about a lot. And actually, the course is designed to fit around life and work, but obviously everyone's individual circumstances are different. So yes, and obviously, so the course that we've got coming up in February is every Tuesday evening for 8 weeks, or 2.5 hours.
Yeah, and I think that is, when you think about it, if this is something really important to you, that is completely manageable. Like I did find it manageable. So yeah.
Did you ever feel like you were behind or like you weren't doing enough?
Not necessarily. No, I don't feel like that. I didn't feel like that. I knew that I couldn't do as many of the experiments maybe as I wanted to. So like I think I did one. I actually couldn't remember which is the one I did during the accelerator. I didn't necessarily have the time to do them all. So what basically happened for me is that I took a little bit of time out, like, and was in a position where I took a short sabbatical, and that's when I did loads and loads of experiments. But I think other than that, you would have just been able to do them just over a bit of a longer period of time. Like I ultimately was like, I'm really in a place, and that I was, could support myself for a few months. That's not everyone's reality. And that's why I think going in with the expectation of like, this course is like the best stepping stone and foundation I could do for myself. But for myself, to get myself in the position that if this takes a little bit longer, I'm going to have all the resources available to me to keep myself on this journey to the point where then I am doing what, I enjoy or have made the change.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, the course is set up so that we're together for 8 weeks, but it's setting you up for much beyond that. And actually, as I know you find, Claudia, like having those kind of resources and tools within yourself to go back to once the accelerator is finished.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if we're going to get to that, but I ultimately I've had 2 career changes since the career course. And like, maybe like some of you might be thinking like, oh, that's a bit of oh God, that sounds like a failure. But to me, they've all just been like stepping stones to get to where I am. And like, maybe the reality is that like, if I'd left Barclays and was like, right, I'm going to go and become a marketing director, that journey might not have happened. So like some of the in-between stuff did need to happen. But all I feel now, and I still refer back to everything I learned on Escape so well, is that like I've got this amazing toolbox that if I was to say now, I want to go and change again, or even just like in this, giving the confidence to change industry, or, even if you stay in the same title, but you're just changing industry, I just don't find that so daunting or paralyzing anymore. Like I feel like, yes, it might be difficult. I'm not saying that I'm like just optimistically skipping through life, but I feel like I know how to approach that. And I think, I did Escape 8 years ago, and I think that's such a testament to the course that stayed with you like 8 years later through lots of change.
Yeah, and actually, and I was going to say that, what feels most different now about how you make decisions compared to before you did the course?
Yeah, I think before, like, I maybe would want to have like everything sorted or know all the answers, or just be quite fearful of the change. And therefore, like, when you feel fear, you normally often don't take any action because it's like your brain and your whole body is actually telling you not to do the thing. And that's how we are actually wired pretty much as humans. And I think now I've got the resources to better say like, yeah, okay, that's probably a bit scary, but let's unpick that. And like, let's go through that as a decision framework. What are you actually scared of? What is actually a real risk? And what are you kind of just making up your mind as like an issue that's, you know, not most probably an issue. Like for me, one of the things, and like maybe I'm a bit ashamed to admit this, but like I was at the time really concerned when I left Barclays around what everyone else would think of me. And that was a fear in my own head. That was like something I made up myself. And now I would say I wouldn't, that's maybe it's also a bit of age, but that just doesn't come up for me anymore. I'm like, you know, I don't really care what my, you know, and I think those are the resources that I got out of like doing the program.
Yeah, and it's such a common way of feeling, and actually it's kind of almost more about as well how you trust yourself, and the kind of confidence you have within yourself, that we certainly kind of work on during the program. So in terms of conscious of everyone's time, so just a little bit of kind of advice and perspective for people who are listening, and then we can get to everyone's individual questions. So we've got people listening who might be exactly where you once were. So if someone here feels stuck but keeps waiting to feel ready, what would you say to them?
I mean, for me, the course, like, you know, I am not being paid by Escape, like quite literally changed my life. And I think if you're feeling stuck and you're feeling any of the things that I spoke about, where you're kind of then frustrated at yourself and you're going in this like irritating loop and you're most probably spiraling, and you're then looking at, you know, some person from school who's just been promoted again, and you're scrolling LinkedIn and absolutely going, you know, I think this is the perfect thing to do to help you get out of that. And you know, maybe it's not something we talked about enough, but I think doing it with other people who are feeling like that is so incredibly important, because it's such a comfort blanket for you not to be like sat at home being like, you know, getting home from a long day at work and being like, right, tonight I'm going to start doing some job applications, and then you opening your laptop, you go on LinkedIn or, you know, try and speak to like a headhunter, and you get nowhere, and you're like, why is this not working? And then you shut laptop, revisit again in 3 weeks, and you kind of just go through that cycle. I think this is just such a great way to break that cycle. And I think having other people who are feeling that and being able to support each other through that is just, you know, so important.
Yeah, totally. And actually, it's something that so many people say, having the kind of community, the people who like get what you're going through, even if they're from different kind of background situations, you kind of all really like lean on each other and help each other out. What do you think would have happened if you'd kept doing what you were doing instead of joining?
I think I'd still be in my job. I genuinely do.
How does that feel?
So unbelievable. Like, I know there's people on my graduate program who are still there, and I'm like, when I see, sometimes I see them and I'm like, oh wow, they're doing so well. Like, obviously I'm like so happy for them, but I'm like, oh my God, that could have just, and I hope that they're really enjoying what they're doing. And this is, you know, I think at the time I just hated working in corporate, and I just didn't, I don't think that's the case. I think you can have really, really enjoyable, successful careers in whatever industry or environment you choose in. But for me, just the thought of that I would still be doing that, yeah, I mean, it sends me sideways. I'm like, but I know if I hadn't have done Escape, I think the most that probably would have happened is I would have been moved bank. Like, I would have maybe gone to a different bank, but I don't think I would have, like, there's not a chance in hell I'd be doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Oh God, just thought of it.
Okay, great. And then just finally, and then I'm going to go on to everyone's questions. What's one myth about career change that you wish you'd let go of sooner?
Oh, good question. I think that it's linear, and that you'll make one change and that's it. And I do remember still thinking that it's like, once I've got the answer to this, oh God, everything's going to be sorted. And what I maybe didn't quite understand is that everything is like a bit of a stepping stone. Escape. I mean, this is how much the program still impacted me, is that I can still remember the quotes and like the lessons. But there was a quote that's used by Steve Jobs, which is like, all these like moments in your life will one day, they're like all these dots that one day will make you realize like they're actually all connected. But for me, I remember really thinking like, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to take some time off, then I'm going to have the answer, and then that's going to be it. And actually, the chances are that's not going to be it, and there's still going to be lots more change. And I think as long as you accept that, you know, that it's not most probably linear, I think you'll be setting yourself up like for really good expectations and success.
Great, thank you, Claudia. Okay, all right, I'll pop into the chat now and read through as they come through. So what were the reasons that you kept stuck in a job that you didn't love for 8 or 9 years, do you think?
I mean, I think a lot of it just came down to like a little bit of like a golden handcuff. Like I was earning a really decent salary, and like that was great, you know, like from my perspective. I think that was also, I knew that from an outward perspective, it looked like I was kind of smashing life. You know, I was like, got a job, and then I managed to buy a house and all this kind of stuff. And actually, my way that I was defining success was built on a way that just actually wasn't what I believe to be a successful life. And I think all those things, just kind of those outward measures of maybe what other people deem to be the way I was defining success was built on other societal, parents, whatever, ideas of success rather than my own. And therefore that was keeping me kind of trapped. And then I think the other bit was, I just didn't know the answer. I think if someone had said, if I knew, like, for example, that I wanted to go into marketing or start a business, or, you know, I wanted to retrain to be a doctor or like a graphic designer or do whatever, I think maybe, because I do, once I know something, I am like a real operator and I'll go and do it. But I was stuck in the unknown, and that's what was keeping me kind of trapped, because I think that made me feel embarrassed about myself.
Yeah, really, really common. Sure. Dakota has asked, if you already have an idea of where you want to go next and are doing the self-reflecting exercises, networking, etc., is the program still worth it?
I think it is. Well, I really believe it is. And there are people in my program who kind of knew what they wanted to do. And the reason for that is because I think it lets you really test that as a thought process, not just on the lens that, in a way that you might have romanticized, but therefore so that then when you make that change, and that there will be a period of difficulty, because what I don't believe ever happens in life is that you take a step backwards, but when you change job, you might have to accept that you've kind of gone a bit linear for a bit before you move up, and you're just taking everything you've learned, having to reapply it. And that change, you know, just any change is uncomfortable. Maybe that feeling is a bit uncomfortable. And I think therefore the program sets you up to be ready for that and kind of prepared for it. And then I think the other part of it is, I mean, I don't know your individual situation, but unless you've actually gone and tried what you're planning on doing, I think the course really enables you to go and figure out ways to test it. And what your course might look like, your experiments might be 1 experiment, 4 experiments, or 3 experiments, or however many, you know, of the same thing, to like really test it. And that could just be like a coffee with someone. Could you get a work experience day with someone? Could you do a little side project, you know, whatever it could be, to then really make sure that then you're super confident in that decision. So, you know, I would say 100% yes. And, you know, you never know, something else might unearth, and that might be like I said, that might not be the thing for now, but it leaves you like open to other things in the future. And I think that's pretty special.
Brilliant. Thank you, Claudia. This is from Maria. Thanks for sharing your story, Claudia. What did the transition look like for you in terms of leaving a probably mid-level job to probably starting again from scratch? Did you go into a lower entry level job? How did you position or use your experience in banking to help you get what came next for you?
Yeah, so basically, as a very quick version of what happened, so I had the course, I stayed at Barclays, I then, and I appreciate this is not available, to everyone. I took a sabbatical, so I took a few months off. I didn't do that. I like go find myself in Bali on a beach. Like I really actually put into play everything that I'd learned. So that's when I did like the flower stuff. That's when I did the wedding. I like learned some new skills as well that I thought, would I be interested in this? Like I went to go and try and teach myself to code, which was a disaster. But anyway, I spent the months doing that. And then that time was up. And during that time, I ended up on oh my God, what are these things called? A hackathon, and of something that I was really interested, which was one of the areas I'd put on my like map was sustainability. And I ended up at this hackathon, and then through that, and this is how you've got to go and put yourself out there in all these different ways, and you have no idea where the opportunity is going to come from. But on that hackathon, an investor came up to me and he was like, I think your idea was really great. Would you like to keep exploring it? And then I was like, yeah. And then I kind of started working on that a little bit. I then went back to Barclays, and then 4 or 5 months, a bit time later, that investor, they ran a accelerator program for startups, but the condition was that you had to be working on your business full time. So I quit. I did that business for about 2 and a bit years. I then kind of closed it, sold a little bit of it, and then from there, that's where I kind of realized actually the bit that I've loved the most of this is all the marketing. And then career change again, got into a role in marketing. It was probably, if I look back on it, more junior than where I was at Barclays. So if you think now, that's like 4 years later, 3-4 years later. But actually what enabled me is that all of that experience at Barclays enabled me to like get promoted and into my new role quite quickly, because I was able to leverage all of that. So there was a bit of maybe what felt like a bit of a sidestep. I remember being like, oh God, if I just, and that was a moment where I felt a bit of like, oh, what have I done? But then that got me to my next role. So yeah, sorry, I hope that kind of answers your question.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Claudia. I'm going to leave it there for questions for now, and then just kind of share a little bit more about how the accelerator actually works, and just, I guess, the framework and some of those practical questions that people have been answering there. I think what I love about your story, Claudia, is that it really shows what's possible, and how change can happen over the long run, and kind of that ripple effect of the experiments and mindset shift that you kind of touched upon. So thank you. So in terms of the accelerator itself, it's not about, as we said today, not about teaching a magic formula, but it's about giving you the space, the tools and the support so that you can find what's right for you. And the journey tends to unfold in 3 kind of phases. So phase 1 is kind of pausing and reflecting. Most of us don't give ourselves permission to stop and ask what really matters. And this first couple of weeks is kind of introspective. It's about pressing pause, stepping back from autopilot, and then kind of looking at your values, your strengths, your needs, and really using that information as data in order to kind of inform how you move forward. And lots of people often say it's the first time that they properly said, what do I actually want from my life and work? Like, what does that really look like for me? Then kind of in the second phase, so that the middle of the program, it's that all about experimenting and exploring, and it's where things really open up. So you map out the possibilities, explore industries or directions that you may or may not have thought you'd considered before, and then you start running these small, low risk experiments. And I suppose this is the antidote to analysis paralysis. Essentially, you get out of your head and into the real world. And then finally, the third phase is all about kind of like deciding and moving, and not deciding forever, as we've talked about, but it's kind of by this final stretch, you've gathered enough data, enough insights and confidence, because that's the really big part of the program as well, to pull everything together into a plan. helping you move forward with a direction that feels right for you now, not forever, but, you know, a really clear next step, and then putting systems and accountability so that you can keep going once the program ends. And I think other couple of practical questions have come up. Do you still have access to the learning materials and connections after the course? Yes, absolutely. You have access to those indefinitely. And, you know, we really recommend that people continue referring back to those. About attendance, someone had said if you miss 1 or 2 sessions, yes, we normally say if you can make up to 80% of the sessions, then you'll still really get the benefit. And obviously, if any further support is needed, we are absolutely here to provide that and help you with that. So hopefully I have covered everything there extra in a kind of nutshell off the back of all the amazing insights and everything you've shared today, Claudia. So thank you. And yeah, just to say thank you all for being here. If anybody else has any other questions, then please do drop me an email. I'd gladly have a chat or reply to you. And yeah, just to say, you know, career change isn't about one big leap, as Claudia, you shared today. It's about, you know, many small shifts that compound into change. So Claudia, thank you very much.
It's amazing. And guys, if you want to reach out, like, just screenshot my name. It's quite peculiar, so you know you'll be able to find me on LinkedIn. Like, please just drop me a message, or Hilary can share my email. I'm more than happy. Like, I feel so passionate about this, and can, you know, feel all the feels and that you guys might be feeling or not feeling, even if we're not in the exact same boat. So even if you just want to grab a 10-15 minute chat or a coffee, then yeah, more than happy to speak to anyone.
Oh, that's great. Claudia, thank you so much for being so open. And thank you everyone for being here. I will share the recordings and Claudia's details and everything this afternoon. So yeah, if today has sparked anything for you, our early birds finish tomorrow, Wednesday night. And then the next accelerator starts on the 17th of February with the final deadline on the 12th. But I'll put all of that in an email. But thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks.